The spiritual cause of sleep paralysis. As we saw in the last chapter, Western sleep scientists theorized that a particular hallucination, which they call felt presence, is the initial cause of all the other hallucinations that people experience during sleep paralysis. I suggest that it is just as logical of a hypothesis to say that the reason that people feel a presence in the room during sleep paralysis is because there actually is a presence in the room. In my opinion, this would account for all the things that happen to people during sleep paralysis. I also believe that such a hypothesis can be shown to have scientific merit. But because scientists in the West start their research with the strongly held belief that there is no such thing as a spirit world, this idea then must be denied from the outset. I would submit that the denial of the spirit world without being willing to consider it as a possibility is not being true to the heart of the scientific method. It is simply a belief that they happen to hold. I think that we don't need to rely on our feelings about the spirit world if we want to test the hypothesis that sleep paralysis has a spiritual cause. I think there are a number of ways that this view can be shown to have merit, beside the fact that it would explain all the things that happen during sleep paralysis. The primary way is that sleep paralysis can be shown to have a spiritual solution. In other words, when you treat this problem as though it is caused by an evil spirit, using the methods I will outline in this book, it goes away. That in itself should be considered interesting by the scientific community, and at the very least, they should endeavor to discover why such methods for stopping sleep paralysis work from their anti-supernatural perspective, which is something I don't expect to happen anytime soon. Another way that we can see that the idea of a spiritual cause for sleep paralysis has merit is through the science of anthropology, which is the study of humankind past and present. In this chapter, we will look into the beliefs of other cultures about sleep paralysis and evil spirits in general, and I will hope to show you that the consistent view that the human family has shared about these issues over the years cannot be chalked up to coincidence. Cultural beliefs about sleep paralysis. I will include in the appendix a complete list of cultural beliefs about the nature of sleep paralysis. Here I will simply list names of a few cultures that believe that sleep paralysis is caused by some kind of an evil spirit. Scandinavian, Fijian, Nigerian, Turkey, Thailand, China, Korea, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malay, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Kashmir, Persia, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Morocco, Hungary, Malta, Greece, Latvia, Brazil, and many, many others. It may seem easy to dismiss these cultural beliefs as irrational, especially if you are convinced that such beings don't actually exist. However, I think that when one studies the specific things that they say about their interactions with these evil spirits, a pattern emerges that is not easily explained with an anti-supernatural worldview. Mankind's claims about the spirit world. From almost the dawn of civilization, mankind has been claiming that they have the ability to contact the spirit world to attain information. They would appoint people like shamans who would practice magic and sorcery, or take certain drugs in order to enter the spirit world and communicate with these spiritual entities for the purpose of healing, divination, and control over people or events. What I think is important about this age-old practice is that the ways that they describe the entities that they had contact with were uncommonly similar. Even more interesting is that the beings that they encountered were not exactly friendly or trustworthy. As a result, interactions with these beings would take a toll on the shaman over time. This is one of the reasons that usually only one person in a tribe was designated to contact the spirit world. The beings were almost universally described as evil. This seems odd because one might think that if these beings were smart enough to have information that humans wanted, and they were willing to give it to them, they might be described as good. However, this assumes that these beings gave this information for free, but very often this was not the case. According to the people who contacted them, the beings often required animal or human sacrifice in exchange for the information. That in itself is an odd thing. That is, that different cultures across the world with no possibility to contact one another very often said these things wanted human sacrifice. In addition to being described as malevolent or bad, they were known to be deceptive. Often they would be described as, quote, mischievous. In other words, they were known to be untrustworthy according to those that interacted with them. They could apparently appear in any form they chose, something that is true in sleep paralysis as well. More interesting than this is that they often used this ability to deceive the person into doing various immoral things, or simply to scare the person. It was also understood that by doing the magical practices that summoned these beings, it would leave the practitioner particularly vulnerable to spiritual attack by them. Even today, people that contact these beings regularly for religious or recreational reasons know that they are doing something that will put them at risk. In modern Spiritism, influence exerted by spirits upon mediums is considered a distinct danger to both the mediums themselves and the people they serve. In other words, the more you contact the beings, the more at risk you are to negative things being done to you by them. Every major religious and cultural tradition worldwide has espoused the idea of spirit possession and the need for some form of exorcism. One could make the case that these cultures were simply interpreting various medical conditions as spirit possession. There can be no doubt that that happened as well, but the consistent belief in so many cultures that a person was at extreme risk for spirit possession if they were involved in attempting to contact these beings is evidence that there is something more to it. This is because it shows that they believed spirit possession wasn't simply random, as you would expect if they were referring to an improperly diagnosed medical condition, but rather these ancient and modern traditions point to spiritual mediumship in its many forms as a major risk factor for it. I suggest that these beings that have been labeled as evil, intelligent, deceptive, and dangerous are referring to real spiritual beings, which I will from here on out refer to as demons. Demonology. The study of demons, also called demonology, is basically what we have been engaging in so far in this chapter. However, we need to go a little further in the study because if they are indeed the cause of sleep paralysis, which I will argue that they are in the next chapter, then the more we know about them, the better equipped we will be to stop them. The next step is to determine the best source of information about demonology, which can be a difficult task. While it is possible to find a few books discussing demonology, it is surprising to note the book with the most congruent information describing the character, demeanor, and abilities of these spirits is the Bible. Unfortunately, because of biases toward the Bible, people miss a lot of information describing the supernatural abilities of these entities, and more importantly, they miss the key to overcoming attacks from them. I will list just a few characteristics of demons found in the Bible and show the references for each one where you can do further study. They have intelligence, Ezekiel 28:3, 12, 1 Timothy 4:1. They are deceptive, Acts 16:16-17, 2 Corinthians 11:15. They can take any desired appearance, even that of an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14. They can talk, Matthew 8:29, Mark 1:23-24. They seek and accept worship, including sacrifices, Leviticus 17:7, Deuteronomy 32:17, 2 Chronicles 11:15, 2 Thessalonians 2:3 and 4, 1 Corinthians 10:20. They are the source of occult abilities, 1 Samuel 28:8, Acts 16:16, Isaiah 19:3. They find women attractive, Genesis 6:2. They can perform lying signs and wonders, Matthew 8:29, Mark 1:23 and 24, 34, 3:11 and 5:7, Luke 4:41, 8:28, and Acts 19:15. We could go into much more detail about what the Bible says about demons, including their origin and ultimate destiny, and we will get into some of that in later chapters. For now, however, we will focus in on the person of Jesus and the way that demons reacted to him. The authority that this man named Jesus claimed to have over these spirits is extremely rare in all of history. For example, at one point in the book of Mark, one of these entities says to Jesus, quote, "Let us alone. What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And when the unclean spirit had convulsed him and cried out with a loud voice, he came out of him. Mark 1:24-26. In the Bible, these entities seem to know something about him and the power that he has over them. What makes these entities so afraid of Jesus? Is it because Jesus would later say in Matthew 28:18, "All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth"? What is interesting about the instance in Mark chapter 1, after Jesus cast the demon out of a person, the religious leaders who were watching this were shocked that dealing with demons in this way was possible. Mark 1:27 says, "Then they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, 'What is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him.'" The people in the ancient Jewish world up to this point apparently had no idea how to deal with demonic possession. There was nothing in the Old Testament that told them how to get rid of demons. This is why the men who saw Jesus exhibit such authority over the demonic realm said, "What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." Jesus not only claimed to have this authority of demons himself, but he also gave other individuals who followed him the same power over these malevolent spirits. In Luke 10:17, We see these people, whom Jesus gave this authority to, returning from the mission he sent them on, explaining to him what had happened. Quote, "And the 70 returned again with joy, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject unto us through thy name." It is easy to see that these men were genuinely astonished and happy because they were able to have the same effect on demons that Jesus did. Jesus responded to them, saying, quote, "Behold, I give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven." It would be one thing if these were just words on a page that had no indication that it was true or relevant to today. However, even a simple Google search using the words sleep paralysis and Jesus will turn up millions of hits, and you can read story after story of people finding that this man's name that lived 2,000 years ago is the key to stopping sleep paralysis. There's much more to doing this, however, than simply using his name as a sort of magic word. We will discuss the way to do this in much more detail in the chapter titled How to Stop It. As mentioned in the first chapter, we at StopSleepParalysis.org have seen success in stopping sleep paralysis for good with several hundred cases, using the name and authority of Jesus. We argue that the best reason for this success is not simply that a person who calls on something they think is good will stop it, whether that be Buddha or another religious figure. If that was true, then there would be a million ways that people would claim to be able to stop sleep paralysis, and the medical community would simply tell you to do that in order to cure sleep paralysis. As it stands, however, they say there is no cure, but I hope to demonstrate to you with the remainder of this book that they are wrong. I hope that you have seen in this chapter that the belief in demons is a rational one, if for no other reason than almost every culture on the planet, from all time periods, seem to have been dealing with the same beings, describing them in astonishingly similar ways. The methods in which they contacted them, as well as the havoc that they eventually cause in a person's life, are all described in the same way. I have also suggested that the Bible is the best source of information about demons, not simply because it claims to know how to stop them, but because when we apply the methods it gives us, they really work, even in the most severe cases. It is for this reason that we will be using the Bible as a guide to showing you how to stop sleep paralysis. It has validated its usefulness to us through the years of helping people end sleep paralysis, and if even just for that reason, we think it deserves much more respect than it usually gets in modern society.